Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
Owning a home in China is supposed to be the dream, but between saving for a down payment and paying the mortgage and keeping up with repairs, it's rarely as simple as just getting the keys. Recently, though, the government introduced some changes in housing support. The details matter, of course, but is it just a small adjustment, or will it point to something larger about how people in China will buy and rent and live in the years to come? We're live from our studios in Beijing. This is Roundtable. I'm Steve Hatherley. Thanks for being with us today. And for the show, I'm with Fei Fei and Yushun. First up, for many people around the world, and of course here in China too, home ownership is one of life's biggest goals. But it's also one of life's biggest headaches, potentially, between saving for that down payment, paying off the mortgage, covering maintenance costs, and figuring out where to live in an increasingly mobile world. The journey of having a place to call home is rarely as simple as getting the keys and moving in. But what if the rules of the game started to change? What if a system originally designed for one purpose suddenly began adapting to the realities of modern life? And what happens when governments try to balance personal financial freedom with long-term social security? Today, we're going to look at a change in the way the housing support system works here in China. Is it simply a policy adjustment, or is it something bigger? I think it's a significant change. Any change can be significant depending on your own personal situation, right? And how the policy changes affect you. But I think what we're going to find through our discussion that this is a pretty significant change. Yushun and Fei Fei, good afternoon to you. Yushun, before we get into it, though, and we'll get to specific details and numbers in just a little while, but let's start with the housing fund here in China, what it is and how it works, because every country kind of has their own system, and China, of course, has theirs too.
Yeah, this is actually a kind of mandatory long-term savings program. It is called Housing Provident Fund. So it's basically a fund, and you pay this kind of fund monthly. And then it is designed to help residents afford housing and maintain a social safety net for living. It was first introduced on a trial basis in several cities during the 1990s and was formally implemented under there is a kind of law or regulation. It's called Regulations on the Administration of Housing Provident Funds, which came into effect in June 1999.
So it's been around for a long time. It's gone through some changes, no doubt, over the years. And there's another big change that happened just days ago, as a matter of fact. But just before that, the way it works is you're an employee at a company, you get things subtracted from your paycheck when you get paid on a monthly basis, like your taxes and your health care and stuff like that.
Yes.
And the housing fund is another subtraction from your paycheck, and this is for every employee at almost every company around the country.
Yeah, we'll get into details later, but I think most importantly is that it extracts a part of your salary into this fund, into this fund. But the thing is that the company will also pay for the equal amount of money to this fund.
Understood. All right. So what happened then in early June?
Well, in early June, China's Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development released a revised draft regulation for the management of this Housing Provident Fund to solicit public opinion. And this is basically the third time that these regulations got a major update since they were first established in the 1990s. The first one came in 2002, the second 2019, and this year in 2026. But even it's still in the draft phase. But even before this national draft regulation was published, over 60 cities across the country since this year have already been optimizing their own local housing fund policies to stimulate the market and support residents. Basically sort of changing the gear of what the fund is really for.
Interesting, the timeline started in the 1990s, then a revision in 2002, so only a few years later, then a long time with no revisions. The next one came in 2019, and here we are just a few years after that. with more suggested revisions. All right, so let's get into some specifics a little bit. So what do they look like?
Yeah, the recent changes to China's housing policies, particularly those involving this HPF, focus on expanding access, broadening the scope of fund usage, increasing financial support for homebuyers, and also simplifying the housing-related transactions. So I think that the biggest change, and also one of the biggest points that most of the residents will care about, is the expansion of housing provident fund usage. Because previously they're mostly used for building a house or buying a house. But now it is evolving from a tool primarily used to purchasing homes into a system that supports the entire housing life cycle.
What does that mean, the entire housing life cycle?
Well, so in the past, before 2026, actually, before 2019, second time this regulation got updated, this housing fund was primarily designed for purchases. Like you can only withdraw money from your account when you decide to buy an apartment or build a house.
Otherwise, that money is going to stay in that account.
Yes.
And it's kind of stuck there.
Yeah, you can't, because it's a government-backed funding pool, so it's not something you can withdraw. It's not like a bank's saving account. You can withdraw any money you want to buy anything you want. So it's pretty specific. You can only using it for the housing market. But then I think in 2019, what's changed is that for rentals, you can also withdraw some money if you are renting a house in your city. And that's the second time it's got a major update.
So from 2019, you could use that money to pay your rent.
Yes, yes. And this time it's not only just for renting or purchasing or building anymore, but for more things related to your house. For example, you decide to do some home renovations.
Yeah.
You can also withdraw some money from that account. Or you need to pay the property management fees. A lot of majority of Chinese families living in a residential apartment building complex, and you need to pay thousands of yuan every year into this property management. And now you can also withdraw from your account to pay that.
It is really reasonable because I've seen a lot of people claiming that, okay, I own a house already, which means that I have no chance to get money from this pool, which I pay for monthly. But when I own a house, the thing is that I live in this apartment, I may need to pay for these property management fee on a maybe yearly basis or on a monthly basis. It is quite a huge amount of money if your house is big or the community is quite in high quality or something.
That would have been a major point of contention, I assume, for people before 2019 and before these suggestions here in 2026. Wait a minute, I bought a house already, but yet I'm paying. But yet all citizens have to continue to pay into this fund, right? So that means money will continue to accumulate in a fund that I will perhaps never be able to use because I've already purchased a home.
Yes.
Well, you can definitely use it after you retire.
Yeah, you can withdraw everything after you're retired.
Okay.
But
So it does shift into kind of a pension fund if it goes unused.
yes, but I think that is the contentious point as well, because I think especially for a lot of young people, they can't start to thinking about, well, I can use the money when I was 60. They're in dire need now.
It's not very exciting for a 20-year-old.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're in dire need now. They want to tap into the fund somehow, some way right now. And I think even some regions are also allowing people to use this fund for other things like centralized heating fees or to pay your parking spaces.
Parking spaces.
In your residential areas, or if you need to do some new renovations for for example, if you have an elderly people living with you, a younger family members, a young child, and you need to renovate or modify your home to meet their needs, is something also you can now withdraw money now.
Yeah, more cities too are allowing residents to use their fund accounts to cover things like property management fees. In Hefei, for example, that can be up to 4,200 yuan per year. That's a significant amount of money. So being able to use that amount of money for management fees can be a really, really beneficial tool.
Yeah. And also when it comes, for example, in the Hefei case, it's more than 4,000 yuan a year. I would assume it's quite an amount. I think when it comes to property management fees in China, you are paying by the size of your apartment and also how modern or how high-end your apartment is. So 4,000 is somehow pretty a good amount, I would say, to cap this kind of payment.
Another change in the revised draft is for flexible workers. What's that about?
Yeah, because this system is moving away from being exclusive to traditional employers and employees and formal employment arrangements. So the revised draft explicitly allows self-employed individuals like freelancers or rideshare drivers, DD drivers, delivery workers, and other flexible workers to voluntarily participate in this HPF system, which means that of course, there are no two parties that can pay for this fund, which means that you yourself, which is you employ yourself, right? And then you will pay for this fund by yourself. But the thing is that as long as you are using and you are a member of this fund, you are able to use the low rate interest of the loan provided by this fund.
And when it comes to the contribution, it's also very flexible. You don't have to set a specific amount every month. You can decide the amount that you want to contribute based on your income. And also you don't have to pay it on a monthly basis like a company employee. You can just arrange the timing of your contribution freely. If you have extra income, for example, recently you decide to put in some money into this fund, that's fine. But you don't have a lot of income right now and you decide not to put any money to make any contribution, you can also decide to not make that. But I think what's very exciting is that after you paid into the fund pool for half a year, and then you can start to have loans from the public pools, and when you decide to, for example, buy an apartment or rent an apartment, and also by paying to the Housing Provident Fund pool, you can also enjoy tax deduction by the end of the year.
I'm a little confused on that point. So I'm getting a loan. So I want to buy an apartment and it's pretty expensive and I don't have enough money in my own housing fund account. So I can get a loan from the nation's...
From the public pool.
What does that mean, the public pool?
So the point is that when you want to buy a house, right, you will ask for a loan, you apply for a loan money, and you probably apply from a bank.
Right.
And that's what we call commercial loan. And now you can have also apply for a loan from this public fund. And what is different is that they have a lower interest rate, which means that you will pay maybe a smaller amount of money after you pay off all of the mortgage.
Yeah, so when it comes to the establishment of this pool is that, as an employee company ourselves, we're paying monthly into this bank account, and also our company is also paying into that. And the reason for there are limitations and restrictions to the money that you withdraw from this account is precisely because other people may be asking for loans from this public, from this Housing Provident Funds pools. And so they need to restrict the size of the money are already in the pool, so that when, for example, Yushun decide to buy an apartment and he wants to apply for loans, and I'm continuously contributing to these funds, and that will give him the capacity to ask for, I don't know, 800,000 yuan of loans to buy an apartment. If I withdraw all the money from my account, that means Yushun may not be able to apply a loan of that size. So that is the reason why when it comes to this government-backed housing funds, they need to put restrictions and limitations when it comes to how you use this money.
It's an interesting system. So your money is indeed your money, but it's also part of a larger pool.
Yes.
Let's talk specifics, Yushun. It's got a pretty long history going back to the 1990s. Where employees will pay in and companies will pay in. What types of contributions are we talking about? What percentages, I mean?
As I mentioned before, both employer and employee will contribute to a fixed percentage of the employee's monthly salary, right? So typically the contribution base is the employee's average monthly salary from the previous year. So maybe your company or some third party will accumulate or calculate that amount, and then with a contribution rate ranging from 5% to 12%, which means that you pay for that 5% to 12%, and your company will pay for that the same amount.
Yeah, equal contributions.
Yes, and then although the funds are managed,
it's quite good.
Yeah.
yes,
It's
which means that I think from a personal point of view, the more you pay, the more you get.
Sure.
Right. And although the funds are managed by the government in specialized accounts, the money belongs to the individual employee, which means that the account earns interest. Currently at the 1-year fixed deposit rate of 1.5%, which means that, I can still remember that every year there will be news that, okay, tomorrow maybe, or this month, you will get an extra money in your bank account. Yeah, that means that you're getting your interest from this fund.
I see. And that's a fixed rate of 1.5%. And also, that does not count against your personal income tax.
Yes. And also, I think on top of that, the most significant advantage of this housing provident fund is it's about the loans. It's about the housing loans. As we talked about, it's subsidized, it's low interest, and in particularly, and the current policy, the annual interest rate for first-time home buyers, the interest rate is a little over 2%. For loans terms up to 5 years and 2.6% for terms longer than 5 years. But when it comes to commercial mortgage loans, for example, you apply to a commercial bank for loans, that is over 3%. So you can see the big differences when it comes to the interest rates you need to pay into these loans.
Yes.
And that is also why I think even though some people would think, I'm having these thousands of yuan or hundreds of yuan in the bank account every month and I'm not able to use that. But when you decide to make a big purchase, this is something that's very, very, very useful.
It's also, I mean, the longer you can leave that account alone, the better as well. You said young people these days are wanting to tap into that. But if you can avoid that, then that would be to your benefit over the long term because it accrues interest, a low interest rate, 1.5%, but it's better than than nothing.
Yes.
Better than a kick in the butt, as we say in English.
And actually, a lot of young people are saying that they like this kind of mode because they are kind of forcing them to have savings.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So I want to go back to the beginning a little bit and figure out how this has changed over the years. So has it always on the surface kind of looked the same? I'm curious about those reforms in 2002 and 2019. Were there drastic changes there? What happened?
Well, I think the biggest change is when the first time this housing provident fund was introduced. That was the time when commercial apartment purchases start to, being launched in China. Before that, I remember in the 1970s, 80s, 60s, most of the Chinese home buyers are not necessarily home buyers. Their housing, their apartment are either sort of subsidized or provided as a benefit from their companies. So there is no concept of having a housing market before 1990s. But after in 1990s, after opening up and reform and opening up and so on and so forth, China started to establish this housing market, a market-based housing system. And that is when I think the government thinking, we need sort of a backup system for residents. So that, as Yushun introduced in the very, very beginning, that is a mandate system that is sort of forcing you to make some savings in the long term for a big purchase like housing. But, after that, since the 1990s, China's housing market has changed drastically. And of course, that's why, in 2002 and then 2019, there have been two updates ever since.
And I guess the main point here is that for residents who are in that gray area of, well, they can afford to rent, but they can't afford to buy. Well, up until these suggested changes, sorry, the system is not designed to help you. That money is just going to sit there dormant, essentially, like stagnant water, not being able to be used. And I guess then that's the main reasons why these changes are seen as necessary now.
Yeah, and especially when we have more flexible workers, freelancers, young people who decided to not be employed by the companies in the older system. That means they also cannot be benefited from this system. But now with the latest updates in a lot of regions and cities in China, they are also covered. And when it comes to, I think, the newest changes, like when residents, they're not thinking about change, sell their apartment and buy a new one. They're thinking about make a major renovations when it comes to having elder or younger family members in the family. And when we are talking about building an elderly-friendly, family-friendly society, this is another small alternation that the system is making that you can also tap into the funds if you have a lot.
I mean, that's a good point, because a lot of buildings now, maybe constructed in the early 2000s, 1990s, a lot of those apartment complexes now would require maintenance more. So that means more maintenance costs than were necessary before. So that's going to add to the burden of the residents who live there, perhaps. Renovations. Also, we talk about elder-friendly modifications to homes and things like that. That costs money, and now the funds potentially could be used for that.
Exactly, because when you're thinking about renovating a whole house, and especially for these elderly-friendly modifications, some of these equipments, materials can be quite expensive, and some of them, I remember, could be several 100,000 yuan, which means that you may suddenly need a huge amount of money to do the renovation. And then now, when the money can be used, they're no longer a domain. And the thing is that the number is also showing that a lot of these funds, people want to have something to do with it, but they could not. By late 2024, the Housing Provident Fund balance reached over 10.9 trillion yuan. That's around 1.6 trillion US dollars.
It's a lot of dormant money.
Yes.
Yes. And then that's why I think a lot of people, they have no legal way to use their savings for daily living expenses like property management or heating fees or renovations.
Is this nationwide? You said that different cities, different regions are kind of tinkering with their own systems, but is this going to go all over the country?
It is the intention, I would assume, because the revised regulations were introduced by the Central Ministry of Housing to apply nationwide. But when it comes to the specific measures, the specific implementation methods, for example, how much money you can withdraw, under what condition that you can draw, what kind of application you need to go through
Loan
to withdraw.
limits,
Yes,
things like that.
That's pretty much defined by the local governments because very similar to the healthcare insurance money funds that we talked about. These kind of housing funds are also most of the time managed by local governments, well, very simply because they have different economies. So there is no, it's also would be very challenging. For example, one person's working in Beijing and he or she is paying into Beijing's housing fund. And when he decides to go back to his hometown in, for example, Sichuan, and he wants to tap into the housing funds in Beijing and how to make that link between the city of Beijing to that Sichuan city, not only would be very challenging systematically, but also when it comes to the financial side of the issue, like does Beijing have enough money to pay to a house in Sichuan? Or vice versa, a Sichuan employee decide to buy a house in Beijing, can he tap into the Sichuan funds? That would be very challenging. I think they're also making these changes, helping people who are, for example, working in one city but decide to purchase another house in another city, but it's not that easy because we're talking about public government-backed funds. There should be a lot of limitations.
So if you live in Beijing, you work in Beijing, your contributions came from Beijing, then using those contributions in Shenzhen is it's a impossibility, impracticality. The system's not. I guess maybe this is the right way to say it. The system isn't designed that way.
Yes, on some level, yes. Because when it comes to, Beijing and Shenzhen, the two cities, they're running independently. So it's not as simple as, hey, making a phone call like Beijing, hi, I'm Shenzhen, I want 800,000 yuan from your pool.
Yeah, and multiply that by how many people are going to do that?
But that is not impossible. Of course, more and more cities, they are introducing these kind of exchanging policies, which means that if you are like born and raised in one city and now you're working in a major or another bigger city or another city like Beijing, you can also buy a property using this fund in your hometown. And more cities are starting to have this kind of policies. And I think that's why it is what we call it is becoming more flexible. So, but the thing is that, of course, they are also, I think, based on different policies and approaches by the local governments. So the availability and also details of these benefits may differ across regions.
Has there been discussion of giving full control over the housing fund savings to the people who are contributing to it? Is it not that simple?
It's definitely not that simple. I think there is a director from Tsinghua University called Wu Jing that said the latest reform seeks to strike a balance between doing as much as possible and working within practical limits. Because the key challenge is that the amount of available funds resources vary significantly from city to city. We talked about that. And so as a result, it would be very inaccurate to view all provident fund balances as idle or sleeping money. So if the withdrawal rules were expanded too broadly or implemented too quickly, especially through rules, through like a one-size-fits-all national approach, it could put pressure on some financial systems in some cities and undermine the ability to benefit future contributors. So when it comes to nationwide methods, I think it's more complicated than that. So that's why some are suggesting that allowing provident fund savings to be used for much wider range of consumer spending.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a public policy tool.
Yeah.
It's not your personal bank account.
Exactly. That's what
Yeah.
we call specialized money for specialized use.
Yeah.
Just like your medical insurance money, it is your money, it is in your account, but it should be used for only medical
Right.
medicines
Yes.
and everything.
And also, when it comes to the excitement, when my father retired a couple of years ago and he received a huge amount of this provident funds in his bank account, free to use,
Lovely.
the excitement.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young people, Fei Fei, who 25 years old now, maybe they've been working for a couple of years and they're thinking, ooh, I'd like a new TV. Can you use it for a new TV? Is that considered home renovation? We didn't get into that part of the discussion. What qualifies as home renovation? Or maybe I want to redesign my kitchen a little bit. I'll just dig into that fund. Would you say to do that or would you not?
Well, I think, first of all, it depends on the rules of the regulations of the city that you're living in. But I think the excitement of opening up your bank account to see that Provident Fund balance would be a very exciting number. After
Yeah.
you worked for a few years, I would wait for that excitement.
Wait as long as you can, huh? And by the way, just if you're curious to know, yes, foreigners living in China can buy property. Foreign nationals, I'll read to you here, foreign nationals working in China with work or journalist visas who do not already own a home can purchase one property for their personal residence. There were some restrictions in the past, but those have been eased a little bit. So who knows? That could be good news for my future as well.